Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 10th of March 2019 and the 1st of Bottom Heart 17:35 am. I'm Andrew Botros. In today's headlines, the Islamic State is fading, but believers in its radical ideology live on. Benjamin Netanyahu to be indicated on corruption charges pending hearing. Putin says Russia stopped nearly 600 spies in 2018 inside the UN Security Council's dual veto on Venezuela. More severe weather likely for Alabama this weekend. Study says hormone replacement therapy is tied to Alzheimer's risk, but experts urge caution. Real Madrid eliminated from Champions League after crushing defeat by Ajax. But first to the US. President Donald Trump declared Thursday that ISIS had lost 100% of its territory in Syria, but that news was official from US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, who said the fighting was still ongoing. The official said more than 1,000 civilians had left the last ISIS enclave within the last few hours, joining more than 10,000 who have fled in recent weeks and been taken to custody by the SDF. They will eventually end up in what is only described as an internal camps for the former subjects of ISIS. ISIS widow Bassem, whose husband worked with the self-proclaimed caliphate, conceded that ISIS had made mistakes. Her husband, who has described her as manager for ISIS, had been killed in an airstrike in Raqqa 2 years ago. When asked why so many people had wanted to be free of the Islamic State during the battle of drive to ISIS out of Mosul 2 years ago, she defended the terror group, saying they persecuted farmers and women who didn't cover their faces. When Islamic State arrived, it forced them to cover up, and they did not like that. Many locals also resist the aid offered to them from the West. Under the dusty and dirty conditions in Syria, volunteer Medis from the Christian humanitarian groups, the Free Burma Rangers, the only group providing first aid, food, water and blankets, often struggle to convince wounded victims to help them seek medical attention. They would often suffer excruciating pain that tended to by foreigners. Over to Israel now, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be indicated on bribery and breach of trust charges arising from 3 separate corruption investigations, pending a hearing and announcement. Close to April's general election marked a dramatic moment in Israel's politics and is a major blow to Netanyahu as he seeks a 5th term in office. He repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, denouncing any investigations media-led witch hunt in a prime minister broadcast shortly after the announcement. Netanyahu blamed the left after pressuring the Attorney General Aviachi Mendelblit, a Netanyahu appointed, to issue the indictment. Netanyahu is entitled by hearing of the impending indictment before charges formally laid, but that is not expected to take place until long after the election. Under Israeli law, Netanyahu is not required to step down if he is indicted. He is often required to step down if he is convicted, and the conviction is upheld through the appeals process, which could take years. Thursday's developments cloud an already murky Israeli political landscape. Netanyahu's political enemies will use the investigations against him, but his coalition partners must now decide whether to support a leader who is likely to be indicted and withdraw support, risk angering the shared right-wing voter base. So far, key right-wing coalition partners have said that they will still support Netanyahu because he is still presumed innocent until proven guilty. To Russia now, where Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday that the country's security service stopped nearly 600 foreign agents, intelligence personnel last year, declaring that the adversaries were trying to interfere with Russia's public and domestic affairs. Speaking at a board meeting on Federal Security Service, the agency that has led before becoming president, Putin said counterintelligence agencies acted effectively and offensively last year. In a number of successful special operations, 129 officers and 465 agents of foreign special services were stopped. Late last year, the SPF arrested U.S. citizen Paul Whelan, a Michigan resident and former Marine, on suspicion of espionage. In January, his state appointment lawyer, Vladimir Yezerbakov, said that he was found in possession of classified material when he was arrested in Moscow. Whelan was denied bail in pre-trial hearing in January and remained in leftover detention center in Moscow. His family has dismissed the accusation of espionage, saying that he has been wrongfully detained. The bitter differences between the world's most powerful nations were on full display in New York on Thursday as the United Nations Security Council weighed two equally hopeless resolutions on Venezuela. In a diplomatic game of chicken, the UK, France and the United States squared off against Russia and China. The United States had waited weeks to put forward in draft resolution, which described embattled Venezuelan leaders Nicolas Maduro's presidency as a result of the election that were neither free nor fair. The resolution also called for new election presidentials and delivery access for foreign humanitarian aid. Meanwhile, the Russians were also waiting in the wings with a rival draft resolution, which condemned outside the interference in Venezuela's affairs. Citing unaimed threats to use force against Venezuela since January, Maduro has been battling the control of the country against Juan Guaido, the head of Venezuela's opposition legislature, self-declared president. Maduro is firmly backed by Russia, while Guaido has been recognized as the true head of state by the United States, many regional powers and European nations. To the United States now, more severe weather is possible this weekend in the southeast of the country, including the part of Alabama, where residents are still mourning the 23 people killed tornadoes lashed that region on Sunday. Meteorologists suggest that the areas hit hard by storms and tornadoes last weekend will again be at risk, with damaging winds and possibility of tornadoes this weekend as well. A clash of air masses will produce widespread severe weather over the large area, with the greatest threat for the severe storms on Saturday afternoon heading into evening for the southern Mississippi Valley. The storms moved east on Sunday, impacting portions of Georgia, Florida, and Carolinas. In total, 12 tornadoes struck the Alabama on March 3rd, and total 30 struck across the United States. The strongest tornado was the EF4 that left 23 people dead in Lee Country. That storm, attacked with 274 km/h winds, had a damage path that was 43 kilometers long and 1.5 kilometers wide. In some health news, an observational study on hormone replacement therapy in nearly 85,000 postmenopausal Finnish women has found that those such therapy with very small increased risk for Alzheimer's, especially when using a combination of hormones long-term. The study published on Tuesday in BMJ found an additional 9 to 18 per 10,000 women using hormone replacements could be diagnosed each year with Alzheimer's. The association was highest for women who use hormones for 10 years or more and those who use an oral combination of estrogen, progesterone rather than estrogen alone. But study authors say that results cannot show a cause and effect relationship between the use of hormones and an increased risk of Alzheimer's. That's partly because the study was not able to capture the age and other risk factors for comparison, such as genetic risk for Alzheimer's, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. David Reynolds, Chief Scientific Officer of Alzheimer's Research UK, said that while this study suggests women who received forms of hormone therapy were slightly more likely to be diagnosed, it does not show hormone therapy is responsible for this increased risk. Some experts say that younger women facing menopause should not use any findings to make the decisions or changes in their use of hormone replacement therapy. And in sport, for the first time since May 2015, a run stretching 46 months, Real Madrid is out of the Champions League. Not since the semi-final against Juventus 4 seasons ago has Real tasted the bitterness of elimination for the Europe's Premier Cup competition. This time, on an enthralling evening in the Spanish capital, it was Ajax who was put Real to the sword, scoring 4 stunning goals. The third awarded after agonizing 4-minute wait for the VAR to stun the reigning champions 4-1 on the night and 5-3 on aggregate. Spain's Marca newspaper labelled the failure of the century, adding that heads will roll after this result for many Real managers over the years. Not least Zinedine Zidane, the Champions League has provided welcome respite from underwhelming league campaigns. When the Bernabeu floodlights come on, the Champions League anthem plays, this team has at all times in recent years felt unbeatable. But this season, in gaping absence of Cristiano Ronaldo, under the leadership of 2 hapless managers, Julian Lopetegui and Santiago Solari, the team has become stale and predictable. Real's season has now crumbled, the last trophy available to win evaporated from their grasp on the humiliating night on home soil. Following back-to-back El Clasico defeats, Solari's ill-fated run as manager will also continue to come into question. And that is all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm Andrew Botros from CYC Studios in Sydney, Australia. Have a good night and God bless.